Captain Zethkar stared at the display screen in front of him. 3 small objects floated in the empty space ahead of his ship, the stellar wind. His crew had been traveling through this quiet part of space for 2 days when they picked up a weak signal. The objects were escape pods. Inside each pod, someone was still alive, but not for much longer. Zethkar had been a ship captain for 40 years. He had seen many things in space during that time. He had learned that the universe was a cold place where only the strong survived. Every decision he made was based on one simple question: what would bring the most profit? His navigation officer, a tall alien with 6 arms, turned to face him. "Captain, the pods came from a passenger ship that broke apart 2 days ago. The people inside are Altarians. Their oxygen will run out in 6 hours. Zethkar nodded slowly. He knew about Altarians. They were a peaceful people who lived on several planets near the edge of the galaxy. They had no money, no valuable resources, and no political power. Recently, their government had made new laws that hurt his trading business. "How many are in the pods?" he asked. 3 people, sir. "Looks like a family. 2 adults and 1 child." Zethkar looked at the numbers on his screen. Rescuing the family would cost fuel, food, and medical supplies. It would also make his ship late for an important business meeting. The Altarian government would not pay him for saving their people. In fact, they might not even thank him. He thought about his cargo hold filled with expensive goods that needed to reach their destination on time. His crew needed their pay. His ship needed repairs. Everything cost money, and money came from making smart business choices. "Sir?" his navigation officer asked. "What should we do?" Zethkar had made decisions like this many times before. The galaxy was full of people in trouble. Ships broke down, planets had disasters, and families got stranded in space. If he stopped to help everyone, he would go broke and his crew would starve. "Mark their position in our logs," he said. "Send their location to the nearest space station. Maybe someone else will help them." The navigation officer's 6 arms moved quickly over his controls. "Done, sir. Should we continue on our course?" "Yes, we have a schedule to keep." Zethkar watched as his ship moved away from the escape pods. The 3 small objects grew smaller and smaller until they disappeared completely. He felt nothing about leaving them behind. This was how business worked in space. This was how smart captains stayed alive and made money. In the escape pods, Kethalar held his daughter close to his chest. The little girl, Zara, had been sleeping for most of the past day. Her breathing was slow and shallow. The air in their pod was getting thin and hard to breathe. His wife, Serian, floated in the pod next to theirs. She had been sharing her oxygen with Zara, giving the child her own air through a small tube between the pods. Serian was getting weaker by the hour. "Did they see us?" Serian asked through the communication system. "Yes," Kethalar replied. "Their ship was close enough to scan us. They knew we were here. But they left anyway." Kethalar closed his eyes. He had worked in space shipping for many years. He knew how other species thought about business and profit. Still, he had hoped that someone might help his family. He had hoped that somewhere in the cold universe someone might care about 3 strangers. "Maybe another ship will come," he said, trying to sound hopeful for his daughter. But Kethalar knew the truth. This part of space was empty and quiet. Few ships traveled here. The next vessel might not pass by for days or weeks. By then it would be too late. Zara opened her eyes and looked up at her father. "Papa, I'm cold, I know, little star. Try to sleep some more. Will we go home soon?" Kethalar felt his heart break. "Yes, we will go home." It was not really a lie. They would go home, just not in the way Zara expected. The Altarian people believed that when someone died, their spirit returned to the warm light of their home star. In a few hours, all 3 of them would be going home. On the stellar wind, Zethkar was already thinking about his next business deal. The rescue pods were just a memory now, filed away with hundreds of other decisions he had made over the years. He had learned long ago not to think too much about such things. Emotions made bad business partners. His communication officer received a message from the space station where they had reported the pods. "Captain, Station Commander wants to know if we can delay our trip to help with the rescue. Tell him we cannot spare the time or fuel," Zethkar replied without looking up from his work. "Yes, sir." The bridge crew worked quietly at their stations. None of them questioned the captain's decision. They all understood how space worked. Resources were limited. Time was money. Helping strangers was a luxury that poor traders could not afford. But in the escape pods, time was running out. Kethler watched the oxygen readings drop lower and lower. He held Zara tighter and whispered old songs from their home planet. Sarian had stopped talking an hour ago. Her pod was silent now. The stars around them burned bright and cold, billions of lights in the endless dark. Somewhere among those stars, people lived and worked and loved their families. But here, in this small corner of space, 3 hearts were slowly stopping. Kethler looked out through the small window of his pod. He saw the beautiful colors of a distant nebula, swirls of gas and dust that looked like a painting made by the gods. It was a good last thing to see. "Goodbye, my little star," he whispered to Zara. In space, no one could hear them call for help. The universe continued turning, cold and silent and vast, and in that silence, 3 small pods drifted alone, carrying the last hopes of a family that the galaxy had forgotten. Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison was having a normal day on the bridge of the UES Liberty when everything changed. He was checking the ship's long-range sensors, looking for anything interesting in the empty space around them. The Liberty was an exploration ship from Earth, traveling through this part of the galaxy to study new star systems. "Captain Hayes, I'm picking up something strange," Jake called out. Captain Lisa Hayes walked over to his station. She was a tough woman who had been in space for 20 years. Her crew respected her because she always made good decisions even when those decisions were hard. "What do you see?" she asked. Jake pointed at his screen. 3 small objects about 2 hours away from us. They're giving off energy signatures that look like escape pods." Lisa frowned. Escape pods this far from any major shipping lanes usually meant trouble. "Are there life signs?" "Yes, but they're very weak. The pods have been out here for at least 18 hours, maybe longer." Lisa studied the data on Jake's screen. The pods were drifting with no power for engines. Their emergency beacons were almost dead. Whoever was inside was running out of time fast. "Amy, try to contact them," Lisa ordered. Communications Officer Amy Chen worked at her station for several minutes. "No response, Captain. Either their communication systems are broken, or the people inside are too weak to answer." Dr. Carlos Martinez, the ship's doctor, had been listening from his station near the back of the bridge. "If they've been out there that long, they're probably suffering from oxygen deprivation." "We need to get to them quickly," Lisa nodded. She had been in command of the Liberty for 5 years. During that time, she had learned to trust her instincts about people in trouble. Something about this situation felt urgent and important. "Tom, how long would it take us to reach them?" she asked. Chief Engineer Tom Brady ran some quick calculations. "At maximum speed, about 4 hours. But Captain, we're already 3 days behind schedule for our meeting with the research station. Command won't be happy if we're even later." Lisa looked around at her crew. She could see the conflict in their faces. They all wanted to help, but they also knew that military orders were important. The Liberty was supposed to meet with scientists at Research Station Alpha to deliver supplies and pick up data from their experiments. "What kind of beings are in those pods?" Lisa asked Jake. "Based on the pod design, I think they're Altarians." Lisa had heard of Altarians before. They were known to be peaceful people who mostly kept to themselves. Earth had no political agreements with them, good or bad. Saving them would bring no benefit to humanity or to Lisa's career. Amy spoke up from her station. "Captain, I've been monitoring galactic communication channels. There was a passenger ship that broke apart in this area 2 days ago. The ship was carrying Altarian families who were moving to a new colony." "How many survivors?" Lisa asked. "Unknown. These might be the only ones." Lisa walked to the center of the bridge and looked out at the stars through the main window. She thought about her own family back on Earth. She had a daughter about the same age as the child who might be dying in one of those pods right now. "Captain," Amy said quietly, "if we don't go after them, they'll die out there." "I know," Lisa replied. The bridge was quiet for a moment. Everyone was waiting for Lisa's decision. They all knew what the smart choice was from a military standpoint. The Liberty had important work to do. 3 alien strangers were not their responsibility. But Lisa also knew something else. She knew that being human meant more than just following orders and completing missions. It meant caring about life, even when that life belonged to strangers from another world. Jake set a course for those pods. "Maximum burn." "Yes, Captain." The crew moved quickly to carry out her orders. Tom Brady pushed the engines to their limits. Amy sent a message to the research station explaining that they would be delayed. Dr. Martinez began preparing the medical bay to treat alien patients as the Liberty changed direction, and sped toward the escape pods. Lisa felt good about her choice. She knew that her superiors might be angry about the delay. She knew that rescuing these aliens would bring no reward for her or her crew, but she also knew that somewhere in the cold darkness ahead of them, a family was dying. And if there was even a small chance that the Liberty could save them, then changing course was the right thing to do. "How are we doing, Tom?" she asked over the communication system. "Engines are running hot, but we can maintain the speed for 6 hours if we need to." "Good, Jake. Keep monitoring those life signs. Still there, Captain, but getting weaker." Lisa sat down in her captain's chair and watched the stars ahead of them. She thought about all the other ships that might have passed by those escape pods. She wondered if anyone else had seen the dying family and chosen to keep going. The idea made her sad and angry at the same time. How could someone see people in trouble and just leave them to die? What kind of universe was this, where profit and schedules mattered more than life itself? "Captain," Dr. Martinez said, "I've been reading about Altarian biology. I think I can help them if we get there in time." "We'll get there," Lisa said with confidence. 4 hours later, the Liberty reached the escape pods. Jake's sensors showed that all 3 people inside were still alive, but barely. Their oxygen was almost gone and their body temperatures were dropping fast. "Launch the rescue shuttles," Lisa ordered. "Bring them home." As her crew worked to save 3 strangers from a species they had never met before, Lisa felt proud to be human. In a galaxy that often seemed cold and uncaring, maybe humanity could be different. Maybe they could show other species that there was a better way to live among the stars. The rescue operation began, and with it, something that would change the galaxy forever. Dr. Carlos Martinez had treated many different kinds of injuries during his 15 years as a ship's doctor, but he had never worked on an Altarian before. As the rescue team brought the 3 survivors aboard the Liberty, he quickly studied everything the ship's computer knew about their species. The father, who gave his name as Kethler, was in the worst condition. His breathing was shallow and his skin had turned a pale blue color. The mother, Serian, was unconscious but stable. Their daughter, Zara, was the strongest of the 3, probably because her parents had been giving her extra oxygen. "Will they live?" Captain Hayes asked as she watched Dr. Martinez work. "I think so," he replied, checking Zara's vital signs. But it was very close. Another hour and we would have been too late. As the medical team worked to stabilize the family, other crew members gathered outside the medical bay. Word had spread quickly through the ship that they had rescued survivors from the escape pods. Everyone wanted to know how the aliens were doing. When Kethlar finally woke up 2 days later, the first thing he saw was Dr. Martinez checking a medical device next to his bed. The human doctor noticed that his patient was awake and smiled. "How do you feel?" Dr. Martinez asked. Kethlar tried to speak, but his voice was very weak. "My family, they are safe. Your wife is sleeping in the bed next to you. Your daughter is in the children's ward playing games with some of our crew members." Kethlar turned his head and saw Serian breathing peacefully nearby. Relief flooded through his body. "Thank you," he whispered. Dr. Martinez helped him sit up slowly. "You're welcome, but you should thank Captain Hayes. She is the one who decided to rescue you." "Why?" Kethlar asked. This question had been bothering him since he woke up. "Why did you save us?" Dr. Martinez paused in his work. He had heard stories about how other species in the galaxy operated. Most of them made decisions based on profit or political advantage. The idea of helping strangers without expecting anything in return was apparently very unusual. "Because you needed help," Dr. Martinez said simply. "But what do you want from us?" "Nothing. We just want you to get better and return safely to your family." Kethlar stared at the human doctor. In 40 years of traveling through space, he had met dozens of different species. All of them had wanted something from him: money, favors, information, or political support. The idea that someone would help him without expecting anything in return was completely new to him. Over the next few days, as the Altarian family recovered, they began to meet other members of the Liberty's crew. Chief Engineer Tom Brady visited them every morning to check on their progress. He had built special toys for Zara using spare parts from the ship's workshop. Navigator Susan Clark taught Zara how to play human card games. The little girl learned quickly and soon was beating most of the crew members who challenged her. She laughed and smiled for the first time since the escape pods, and her laughter made everyone on the ship feel happy. Cook Andy Robinson prepared special meals that would be safe for Altarian digestion. He spent hours researching their dietary needs and creating new recipes. When Kethler asked why he was working so hard for strangers, Andy just shrugged and said, "Good food makes everyone feel better." Communications Officer Amy Chen helped the family send messages to their relatives on Altair Prime, letting them know that they were safe. She refused to accept payment for the long-distance communications, even though it used expensive ship resources. Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison showed Zara how the ship's navigation systems worked. He let her help plot courses to nearby star systems and taught her about the different types of stars and planets they passed. Zara was fascinated by everything and asked hundreds of questions. "Your people," Kethlar said to Captain Hayes during one of her daily visits, "they are very kind to strangers." "We try to treat others the way we would want to be treated," Hayes replied. "But you ask for nothing in return." "What would we ask for?" "You are guests on our ship. Our job is to take care of you until you are safe." Kethler shook his head in amazement. "In my travels, I have never met people like this. Most species want payment or favors when they help others." "Maybe we do things differently," Hayes said with a smile. As the days passed, Kethlar began to understand that this was not an act or a trick. The humans genuinely cared about his family's well-being. They worked extra hours to make sure the Altarians were comfortable. They shared their food, their entertainment, and their knowledge without asking for anything in return. Sarian recovered more slowly than her husband, but she also noticed the kindness of the human crew. When she was finally strong enough to walk around the ship, crew members would stop their work to ask how she was feeling. They brought her books to read and music to listen to. They showed her pictures of Earth and told her stories about human culture. "I do not understand," she told her husband one evening as they watched Zara playing with some human children in the ship's recreation area. "Why are they so good to us?" "I have been asking myself the same question," Kethler replied. "I think this is simply how humans are." Dr. Martinez overheard their conversation as he conducted his evening medical checkup. "We have a saying on Earth," he told them. "We are all in this together. The universe is a big, dangerous place. If we do not help each other, who will?" That night, as the Liberty continued its journey toward Altair Prime, Kethler lay awake thinking about everything that had happened. 3 weeks ago, his family had been abandoned by a ship captain who saw them as worthless. Today, they were surrounded by beings who treated them like honored guests. He thought about the human saying that Dr. Martinez had shared. "We are all in this together." It was such a simple idea, but it was completely different from how most of the galaxy operated. Most species believed in survival of the fittest or look out for yourself first. But humans seemed to believe that everyone deserved help, regardless of their species or what they could offer in return. It was a revolutionary idea that challenged everything Kethler thought he knew about how intelligent beings should behave. As he drifted off to sleep, Kethler made a decision. When he returned home, he would tell everyone about the humans who had saved his family. He would tell them about a species that chose kindness over profit, compassion over convenience. Maybe, he thought, the galaxy could learn something from these strange, wonderful beings called humans. 3 weeks after the rescue, the UES Liberty arrived at Altair Prime, the home planet of the Altarian people. As the ship approached the planet, Kethler looked out at the familiar blue and green world where he had been born. He felt grateful to be alive, but he also felt changed by his experience with the humans. "Captain Hayes," he said as they prepared to leave the ship, "I want to speak with my government about what you did for us." "That is not necessary," Hayes replied. "We were happy to help." "But it is necessary," Kethlar insisted. "My people need to know about humans. They need to understand what real kindness looks like." When the Liberty landed at the main spaceport, news crews and government officials were waiting. The story of the rescued family had already reached Altair Prime through the messages that Amy Chen had helped them send. But the full details of their experience were not yet known. Kethlar requested a meeting with the Planetary Council, the group of leaders who made important decisions for all Altarians. The council agreed to see him, mostly because they were curious about his experience with the humans. The council meeting was held in a large circular room with seats for 50 council members. Kethlar stood in the center and told his story. He described how his family had been abandoned by the first ship, how the humans had found them and risked their own mission to save 3 strangers. They asked for nothing, he explained to the council. No payment, no favors, no political agreements. They helped us simply because we needed help. Counselor Vethra, an older female who was known for her practical thinking, leaned forward in her seat. This makes no sense, she said. What do the humans really want? There must be something. I spent 3 weeks on their ship, Cathalar replied. I saw how they treated not just my family but each other. They work together. They share what they have and they care about the well-being of everyone around them. This is simply how they are. The council members looked at each other with confusion and doubt. For hundreds of years, Altarians had dealt with other species who always wanted something in return for their help. The idea that an entire civilization might operate on pure kindness seemed impossible. Perhaps, suggested Counselor Zethka, this was just one unusual ship. Maybe most humans are different. Kethalar shook his head. I asked Captain Hayes about this. She told me that helping others is a basic human value that is taught to all their children. She said that any human ship would have done the same thing. The council spent hours debating what Kethalar had told them. Some members wanted to dismiss his story as too good to be true. Others were intrigued by the possibility that humans might be genuinely different from other species. Finally, Counselor Vethra made a proposal. We should investigate these humans more carefully. If what Cathalar says is true, then perhaps we should change how we interact with them. Within days, the story of the human rescue had spread beyond Altair Prime. Altarian news services shared the story with other planets. Trade ships carried the news to distant star systems. Soon beings all across the galaxy were talking about the humans who had saved lives without expecting anything in return. The story reached Nexus Station, a busy trading post where ships from hundreds of different species stopped to buy supplies and conduct business. In the station's cantinas and meeting halls, beings debated whether the story could possibly be true. Captain Zethkar heard the story while his ship, the Stellar Wind, was docked at Nexus Station for repairs. He was sitting in a cantina when a group of Altarian traders at the next table began discussing the rescue. They say the humans risked their own mission to save people they had never met, one of the Altarians was saying. Impossible, replied a consortium captain from another table. No species is that foolish. Zethkar listened to the conversation with growing unease. 3 weeks ago, he had been the captain who left those same escape pods to drift in space. He had made what he thought was a logical, business-smart decision. But now everyone was talking about the humans who had made a different choice. His navigation officer approached his table. Sir, I have been hearing this story all day. Do you think it is true? Zethkar stared into his drink. I do not know. But deep inside he did know. He had seen the escape pods on his sensors. He had known that people were dying inside them. And he had chosen to leave them behind because saving them would not make him any money. The humans had made a different choice. They had put the value of life above the value of profit, and now the whole galaxy was talking about it. That night, Zethkar lay in his bunk and thought about the decision he had made 3 weeks ago. For 40 years, he had believed that the universe operated on cold logic and survival of the fittest. He had thought that every intelligent species understood this basic truth. But what if he had been wrong? What if there was another way to live and work in the galaxy? The next morning, Zethkar made an unusual decision. He ordered his ship to change course for Altair Prime. His crew was confused because they had no business contracts in that system. When they asked why they were going there, Zethkar simply said, I need to understand something. The journey to Altair Prime took 5 days. During that time, Zethkar thought constantly about the choice he had made and the choice the humans had made. He wondered what kind of captain he might have been if he had grown up in a society that valued kindness over profit. When the Stellar Wind arrived at Altair Prime, Zethkar requested a meeting with Kethalar. The Altarian, now fully recovered and back with his extended family, agreed to see the captain who had abandoned him in space. They met in a quiet park near Kethalar's home. Zethkar had expected anger and accusations, but Kethalar's face showed only curiosity. Why did you come here? Kethalar asked. I need to understand what happened, Zethkar replied. I need to understand the humans who saved you. For 2 hours, they sat on a bench and talked. Kethalar described his experience on the Liberty in detail. He told Zethkar about the kindness of the crew, their refusal to accept payment, and their genuine care for strangers. They made me believe that there is more to life than just survival, Kethler said. They showed me that intelligent beings can choose to be good to each other, even when it costs them something. Zethkar listened carefully to every word. As Kethler spoke, something began to change inside the old captain's heart. For the first time in decades, he began to question the principles that had guided his entire life. What you describe, Zethkar said slowly. It sounds impossible, but you were there. You saw it with your own eyes, I did. And it changed everything I believed about the universe. When their conversation ended, Zethkar returned to his ship with a head full of new ideas. He looked at his crew differently. He thought about his business decisions differently. He wondered if there might be a better way to live among the stars. The story of the human rescue continued to spread. And slowly, one conversation at a time, one changed mind at a time, the galaxy began to consider the possibility that maybe the humans were right. Maybe kindness was not weakness. Maybe caring for others was not foolishness. Maybe there was a better way to be. 6 months after the rescue, the galaxy had begun to change in ways that no one had expected. The story of the UES Liberty and the 3 Altarian survivors had traveled to hundreds of worlds, sparking conversations about morality, compassion, and what it truly meant to be civilized. On Altair Prime, the Planetary Council had made several important decisions. They lifted all trade restrictions against human ships and established new emergency protocols for their own vessels. Any Altarian captain who encountered beings in distress was now required to offer assistance, regardless of the cost or inconvenience. Counselor Vethra, who had initially been skeptical of Kethlar's story, had become one of the strongest supporters of what people were calling the human standard. She had spent weeks studying human culture and philosophy, trying to understand how an entire species could develop such strong values of compassion. We have been thinking about survival and progress in the wrong way, she announced during a public address. The humans have shown us that true civilization is not measured by technology or military power, but by how we treat those who need our help. The Galactic Trade Consortium, the large organization that controlled much of the galaxy's commerce, was facing pressure from member worlds to change their policies. Traditionally, consortium ships were only required to report the location of stranded vessels, not to actually rescue them. But public opinion was shifting rapidly. Captain Zethkar found himself at the center of this change. After his conversation with Kethlar, he had returned to his duties with the Stellar Wind, but everything was different now. He could not stop thinking about the choice he had made and the choice the humans had made. 2 weeks after returning from Altair Prime, Zethkar encountered his first test of his new perspective. The Stellar Wind was traveling through the Vega system when they received a distress signal from a damaged mining vessel. The ship's engines had failed and 23 miners were stranded with limited supplies. The old Zethkar would have reported the location and continued on his way. Rescuing 23 miners would require significant resources and would make his ship very late for a profitable delivery contract. But as Zethkar looked at the distress signal, he heard Kethlar's voice in his memory. They showed me that intelligent beings can choose to be good to each other, even when it costs them something. Change course for the mining vessel, Zethkar ordered. His crew looked at him in surprise. Sir, that will make us 3 days late for the delivery contract, his navigation officer pointed out. I know, Zethkar replied. Do it anyway. The rescue operation took 12 hours. The Stellar Wind's crew worked hard to transfer the miners and their essential equipment to safety. When Zethkar's corporate superiors demanded an explanation for the delay, he gave them a simple answer. It was the right thing to do. That phrase began appearing in reports throughout the galaxy. It was the right thing to do. Simple words that somehow carried revolutionary meaning in a universe that had operated on cold calculation for thousands of years. Other captains began making similar choices. A consortium cargo ship delayed an important delivery to help repair a damaged passenger liner. A military patrol vessel used expensive fuel to escort a group of refugee ships through dangerous space. A research vessel shared their medical supplies with a colony that was fighting a plague. Each time someone asked why they had helped, the answer was the same. It was the right thing to do. Dr. Martinez received an unexpected message from the Altarian Medical Council. They wanted to invite him to help establish new emergency medical protocols that could be used to treat multiple species during rescue operations. The invitation was a great honor, and Dr. Martinez accepted immediately. Chief Engineer Tom Brady was contacted by the consortium's engineering corps. They wanted him to share human rescue technology and help design new ship systems that would make emergency operations more effective. Tom was excited to help make space travel safer for everyone. Navigator Susan Clark found herself consulting on new astrogation standards that would help ships identify and respond to distress signals more quickly. Her work would eventually save thousands of lives across the galaxy. Captain Hayes continued her exploration mission aboard the Liberty, but now human ships were seen differently wherever they traveled. Instead of being viewed as just another species exploring space, humans had become symbols of hope and compassion. At spaceports and trading stations, other species would point out human ships to their children. "Those are the humans," they would say. "They are the ones who help others." Young Zara, the Altarian child who had been saved by the Liberty, had started learning human languages at school. She told her parents that she wanted to join a human crew when she grew up, so she could learn more about the species that had shown her family such kindness. "They did not save us because we were important," she explained to her classmates. "They saved us because we were alive. They think all life is important." As word of the human rescue spread, more and more species began adopting what became known as the human standard. It was not a formal treaty or law, but a growing understanding that some things were more important than profit margins and political calculations. The Andorian fleet, known for their military discipline, changed their regulations to require all ships to assist vessels in distress. The Rigelian Trade Alliance, traditionally focused only on business, established emergency response funds to help cover the cost of rescue operations. Even the most practical and profit-minded species began to see the value in the human approach. Ships that were known for helping others found that they were more welcome at ports and trading stations. Captains who followed the human standard developed better reputations and received more business opportunities. The change was not universal or immediate. Many beings continued to operate by the old rules of survival and self-interest. But a seed had been planted, and it was growing throughout the galaxy. Captain Hayes received regular reports about the changes that were happening across space. Each story made her feel proud of her species and hopeful for the future. Humanity had not conquered the galaxy with weapons or technology. Instead, they had won hearts and minds with something much more powerful: the simple belief that every life had value. On the first anniversary of the rescue, Kethalar sent a message to the Liberty. "Dear Captain Hayes and crew," it read, "my family and I think of you often, not just because you saved our lives, but because you changed how we see the universe. You showed us that kindness is not weakness, that compassion is not foolishness. You proved that even in the cold darkness of space there is room for warmth and light. Thank you for teaching us what it means to be truly civilized." As Captain Hayes read the message to her crew on the bridge of the Liberty, she looked out at the stars ahead of them. Somewhere in that vast darkness, other ships were traveling between worlds. Some of those ships might encounter beings in trouble, and now, thanks to a simple decision to help 3 strangers, more of those ships would choose to stop and help. The galaxy was becoming a little bit kinder, one rescue at a time. And it had all started with humans doing what humans do best: caring about others, even when those others were strangers from distant worlds. In the end, humanity's greatest gift to the galaxy was not advanced technology or military might. It was the revolutionary idea that every being deserved help when they needed it, regardless of their species, their wealth, or what they could offer in return. It was proof that sometimes the most powerful force in the universe is not gravity or nuclear fusion, but simple human kindness.